Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the most intriguing games of the past decade. For starters, this game was met with universal acclaim. On the surface, Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the most loved and one of the most respected games of the past decade. When the game released in 2017, it was met with a Metacritic score of 89, and through the past 8 years, over 20 million copies have been sold. It's safe to say that this game has been loved and played by many. So, fast forward to 2020, Horizon Zero Dawn officially released for PC, and I decided to give this game a chance. Naturally, I had seen all the discussion surrounding this game, and I was excited to give a game that reviewed so well my time. So I started to play it, I was engrossed by the beautiful graphics, and the robot dinosaurs were so cool, and I was playing it nonstop, and then one day, 20 hours in, I put the game down for the day, and I never picked it up again after that. That desire to finish the game, to see Aloy's story through to the end, was just not there for me. I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe this style of game wasn't for me, or maybe the gameplay and story didn't hook me as much as it did for other people. So I left this game alone for 5 years. Another entry in the franchise, Horizon Forbidden West, came and went, and I started to realize that I don't think I'm the only one. I started digging through Reddit posts, top 10 lists, and every way you can imagine where gamers rank games, and I found it incredibly hard to see anyone talking about this game. For a game that reviewed so incredibly well, Horizon Zero Dawn was not getting talked about as much as Sony's other first-party classics like The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, and even Insomniac's Spider-Man games. This sparked a renewed interest in me. I was curious now on what this game was like 8 years later, and if all the systems, features, world, and story had held up in these 8 years. Had I been right in 2020, and was this game just not that good? Or is this a classic case of people forgetting what made this game special all those years ago? These were questions I had to find the answer to, so today, let's take a deep dive look at Horizon Zero Dawn, all its systems, features, story, and gameplay, and let's ultimately answer the question, is Horizon Zero Dawn a forgotten gem? Before we begin, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and please consider subscribing to see more content like this. Now, back to the video. I want to start this deep dive off with the world. Now, on the surface, this is by far one of the most beautiful game worlds I have ever experienced in a video game. It helped that I was playing this game in 4K with the remastered edition that had come out recently, but still, goddamn, this game is gorgeous. It's not as simple as the graphical prowess of this game is good. The art design in this game is simply put phenomenal. Horizon Zero Dawn is set hundreds of years in the future where humanity as you and I know it was wiped out by robot dinosaurs and animals, sending humanity back to square one into the primitive days. Off the bat, this type of vibe isn't necessarily new. There are plenty of other games and pieces of media that highlight a juxtaposition between old world societies and new world technologies, but it is just done so well in Horizon Zero Dawn. It obviously helps that the graphics are good, but the design of each of the robots, from the relatively harmless and benign grazers that look like deers from our world, to straight primitive robot beasts that look like they came out of the Jurassic Age, look incredible. These art designs, in conjunction with the tribal designs for the clans in this game, elevate the art design even further. Every single tribe, from the Nora to the Banuk to the Karja to the Oseram, all have different unique designs for their armor and weapons that actively reflects the world around them and how they live. Couple all of this with the gorgeous foliage, scenery, and biomes, this makes the game world one of the most design complete game worlds I've ever experienced. Guerrilla Games, the developers behind Horizon Zero Dawn, did some serious lore building to make the tribes, the machines, and the world that Horizon Zero Dawn is set in work harmoniously, and by doing this, made one of the strongest games I've ever played in terms of art design. There are a couple of issues here or there with the graphics themselves, like the awfully stiff facial animations, but they overall don't really detract from the overall phenomenal art design that Horizon Zero Dawn has to offer. Now, if you've noticed, I spent this entire first bit of this world section talking about the truly great art design and graphics, conveniently neglecting the actual content of the world itself. And that's for good reason. You see, if you were to ask me how I would describe Horizon Zero Dawn's world in one sentence, I think the phrase that most aptly describes it is gold plated shit. The surface level aspects of the world are fantastic, hence the gold plating. Like I mentioned earlier, the art design itself is incredibly good. But beneath all that gold plating is unfortunately a sorry sack of shit. Ubisoft games get a lot of flack for the quote unquote Ubisoft open world experience, and for good reason. Ubisoft's game worlds are traditionally littered with meaningless activities, way too many icons on the map, and of course, those god awful radio towers. It felt like Guerrilla Games took all those things that Ubisoft's game worlds are known for and decided, hey, we can do you one better. Just look at this map. From machine sites, to campfires, to raider camps, to cauldrons, to hunting sites, to long necks, every single icon in this game world serves to do one thing: waste your goddamn time. Raider camps are nothing but a couple of structures and some human enemies. You complete those by killing every single enemy, and oftentimes, there is nothing new or interesting in the layouts of these camps. Cauldrons are long-winded, incredibly annoying, half parkour puzzle, half combat levels where you make it to the middle of the cauldron by solving a bunch of parkour puzzles and killing some machines and destroy the core at the center. It doesn't change whatsoever for each of the cauldrons on the map. Hunting sites are time trialed machine hunting, and the long necks are Guerrilla Games' version of the radio tower. You find a nice vantage point to jump onto the neck of the long neck, and you climb to the top, hack it, and now the fog of war clears for that section of the map, and a million new icons show up. And the worst part about all of this is that all of these points of interest are spaced so close to each other that you do not get a single second to breathe between the POIs. The machine sites in particular are so close to each other that you are constantly in stealth mode to get anywhere. I get that this world is supposed to be hostile, with deadly machines everywhere, but it's just too much. I'm not saying this game needs to be like Ghost of Tsushima or Ghost of Yote, where there's miles and miles of empty space between some of the POIs, but for a world as gorgeous as this, I think there should have been space to incorporate some areas where quiet contemplation is encouraged. Areas where there's silence around you, and all you hear are the trees rustling and the world around you breathing with life. This game's graphics and sound design is good enough for moments like this, but Guerrilla Games decided that players needed to be bombarded with things to do every 5 seconds or they would get bored. It's such a shame that I had to resort to fast traveling everywhere for a world as gorgeous as this. The campfires around the world are prevalent enough to fast travel to the nearest one before walking the couple hundred meters to the objective marker. This is a game world where I desperately did not want to do this, but I just had to. There was too much going on at any given point for me to justify the 10 extra minutes it would take for me to get to my objective because of the millions of machines attacking me on the journey there, than to fast travel to the nearest campfire and walk to the objective. Unfortunately, the last piece of this gold-plated shit is the city of Meridian. The city in Horizon Zero Dawn is said to be the beacon of civilization after extinction. A city that is safe from the machines and free from any rule of that other than the Sun King. And to me, it was just so small. Don't get me wrong, the spectacle is there. The city is placed upon a massive cliff and you can see the valley stretch for miles and miles beneath you. But the actual city itself is painfully small, painfully static, and is only used for a couple of quests and specialty merchants. Everything about this city is built up to be something great, and it falls short in almost every way. Now, look, I get it. This game came out 8 years ago, and so one could say it's unfair for me to compare this city to games that came out much later than Horizon Zero Dawn. But, and I feel like I always say this, Witcher 3 came out 2 years prior to Horizon Zero Dawn, and yet, Novigrad is still one of the most vast and richly detailed cities I've ever come across a full decade later. Novigrad, like Meridian, isn't necessarily the main event of the game either. Unlike Los Santos in GTA 5 or Night City in Cyberpunk 2077, the majority of the game isn't set in the city, and there are hundreds and hundreds of miles of land to explore outside of the city. And yet, Novigrad still stands the test of time as one of the best in-game cities I've ever experienced. Obviously, CD Projekt Red is one of one, but Horizon Zero Dawn's graphical prowess and technical advancement showed that a city like this could be made for this game, and yet it wasn't. And so I'm stuck saying Meridian was a disappointment. Horizon Zero Dawn's world is a direct example of my statement from the beginning of the video. I called Horizon Zero Dawn one of the most intriguing games of the past decade, and this world that Guerrilla Games built is in fact intriguing. On the surface, it has everything going for it: gorgeous graphics, amazing art design, and fantastic biomes. And yet, the second you shovel beyond the surface, you find that this world is more derivative and resemblant of the absolute worst versions of Ubisoft's game worlds. From an utterly ridiculously covered map to meaningless activities to the same tired fog of war system, Horizon Zero Dawn does nothing to innovate on the open world design we have tirelessly seen, and in fact, can be actively considered the worst offender of this style of open world game design. Unfortunately, these expectations that are created from that gold-plated exterior that are inevitably crushed horrifically when you dig deeper is a common theme that you'll see throughout this video. Moving on to the gameplay, much like the world, there is a gold-plated exterior with the cinematic action, the incredibly cool machines you get to fight, and the different options you have to take down these gargantuan machines. However, again, much like the world, once you dig deeper, you realize that there isn't much to the whole system. It's not as frustratingly bad as the world, so I wouldn't exactly call it a shit interior, but it isn't anything new or anything that special, so I would say the inside is more like stale bread. Starting with the basics, Horizon Zero Dawn's gameplay is third-person, action gameplay where you primarily use an assortment of bows, traps, and bombs to take down these massive, monster-like machines. And look, if that sounds fun to you, chances are you're gonna have fun with the combat. You're always running around, shooting at these machines, jumping, sliding, dodging, doing whatever you can to ensure that these machines aren't able to trample you. This game does a good job of making you feel the power of these machines. Each species of machine has a different assortment of ways it can mess you up, whether that's with attached machine guns, lasers, concussion mines, fire, ice, electricity, or just by good old-fashioned trampling. 2 or 3 hits from these machines is going to kill you. To counteract this, and to give you that feeling of power, there's a pretty clever weak spot system you can use to your advantage. Arrows are obviously an incredibly primitive way to fight against these massive hunks of metal. So, if you scan an enemy, the game will highlight weak spots that you can shoot at to make it easier for you to do more damage. Each enemy has different types of weaknesses, be it fire, ice, or shock, or even something like tear. This introduces a nice game of figuring out your enemy's weakness and using that weakness against them. It's especially fun when you have an enemy whose weakness is tear, and you can use an arrow that specializes in tear, and you one by one dismantle the machine by taking off its various parts and rendering it a shell of its former self. I also like that the gameplay is primarily based on resource gathering and crafting. It makes sense given the state of the world in this game, but everything from your arrows to your traps to your bombs to your resource and ammo satchel upgrades requires materials that you find out in the wild. Some will be found just in the world, like branches and healing herbs, but most are specific machine parts obtained by going out, hunting those machines, and harvesting them for parts. It always adds to the sense of living off the land that this game hammers you with. Every single tribe in this game has had to learn to coexist with these machines and hunt these machines for parts, much like people used to do with real animals. It's a cool way to engross the player in this world's lore while also providing an incentive to go out and hunt these machines. I also think the XP progression is solid enough as well. Now, Horizon Zero Dawn isn't exactly a full-fledged RPG, it's much more of an RPG light, meaning there aren't many ways to build out your Aloy to play differently from playthrough to playthrough. Instead, if you do enough of the side quests and activities that are littered throughout the map, you're going to eventually get enough skill points to unlock whatever you want from the skill tree. A lot of people take issue with that in RPGs, citing it as a reason to not want to do subsequent playthroughs, but in this game's defense, I don't think it ever set out to be this super deep RPG, and so I don't really mind this type of progression in this scenario. All of the skills you get serve to make the combat or stealth more engaging and slightly easier. Whether it's longer slow-mo time to make sure you hit your shot, or allowing you to get more materials out of machines, or knocking multiple arrows at a time for extra damage, all of these skill points serve as fun ways to make the combat more engaging. So at this point, I think it's safe to say that I overall do really enjoy the combat, but I'm sure many of you are waiting for the other shoe to drop. If I only have such nice things to say about the gameplay, why did I call it a piece of stale bread? And look, the bottom line is, everything that I've talked about, the different weapons, the weak spots, the crafting, the skill trees, all work together very well in theory. In practice, fights are way too chaotic for much of the systems and features to be actually useful. For one, melee combat in this game is incredibly underbaked. Aloy gets a spear that she can use to melee attack enemies, but can also be used to override machines and make them fight for her. Now, in theory, this sounds cool. If a machine gets too close to you, you can take it on head first and do some damage before safely retreating. But in practice, the spear does almost zero damage, especially to higher level enemies, and so you have to resort to gathering as much distance as possible between you and your enemy. Now, this would all be well and good if the machine's main goal wasn't to get as close as possible to you and trample your ass to death. And even so, even if that is their ultimate final goal, one enemy is still doable. You'd spend a lot of time running around and dodging, sure, but that's okay, because that's how the game is designed, and at least it gives you a fair shot. But once again, unfortunately, you can fight as many as 8 to 10 machines at a time, and between all their different abilities, their desire to get as close to you as possible, your lack of reliable melee, and the relatively small and difficult to hit weak spots, you are left with one of the most frustrating combat systems I've ever experienced. It's like if you took a Souls-like game, say Elden Ring for example, a game whose whole gameplay ideology is brutally tough but fair combat, and completely took out the fair part. Now, let me be clear, I am not comparing this game's difficulty to that of Elden Ring's or any other Souls-like for that matter. I'm simply pointing out that this game is frustrating at times, not because I feel like I didn't have the skill to master it, but because I felt slighted by the systems at work against me, and the unfairness and chaos of combat. To me, this type of systemic failure is even more frustrating than that of a game whose fundamental systems just aren't very good. Because in a game like that, you at least have the expectations of knowing that the combat and the gameplay in general just isn't very good. But in Horizon Zero Dawn, the bones of a great combat system is there, and it can be really fun and satisfying at times. When you're firing on all cylinders, and you're not missing shots, and you're sneaking around, picking off machines, you really do feel like that badass hunter that the game tells you Aloy is. But the vast majority of the time, it felt more like I was dodging and running for my life while trying to sneak in shots with my bow and arrows when I could. All of these gripes don't even mention the complete and utter unreliability of the stealth system. You can try and stealth strike enemies, but the game won't tell you if it'll kill the machine outright or if it'll just injure them. But if you only injure them, the machine alerts the rest of the pack, and you're immediately found and you're back to square one. Or if you decide to be coy and use tripwires to try and stealth through certain sections, whenever an enemy hits a tripwire, they're immediately suspicious and will find you instantly. It's things like this that really detract from an otherwise solid set of gameplay systems. I've talked a great deal about the combat against machines, but haven't even talked about the combat against humans. It's a complete afterthought. Obviously, your arrows have to be strong enough to basically take down massive hunks of metal, so naturally, humans in this game are essentially a non-threat. A headshot is an insta-kill, so knowing this, sneaking and picking people off through long-range arrow sniping is the best way to engage in combat against humans and serves to be more of a boring time waster than anything actually engaging. Look, I know I was pretty tough on the combat. Honestly, when doing research for this video, I found that most people seem to generally like the combat. No one I saw thought that the gameplay was revolutionary or groundbreaking or anything like that, but most people could say that it was competent and for the most part fun. And to be honest, in the same way you can enjoy some stale bread if you're ever really hungry, I think you can enjoy Horizon Zero Dawn's combat and gameplay in general if you're yearning for a high-octane third-person experience. It isn't perfect and can frustratingly be bad sometimes, but the core systems and features that are there are pretty good. And there is fun to be had throughout this game's runtime. I never wanted to keep playing because of the gameplay, but I also never wanted to stop playing because of the gameplay either, if that makes sense. It was just there, and I engaged with it when I had to, and I moved on to do whatever I needed to do to progress the story. Speaking of the story, let's finally talk about it. Now, if you pay attention to discourse about this game online, I think you'll find that most people who really love this game love it because of the incredibly lore-deep and engaging story. And so, let's start from the beginning. You play as Aloy, a young girl and an outcast of the isolationist Nora tribe. You're not sure why you're an outcast, but you've been one since birth, and so you presume it's because of your parents. You live on the outskirts of Nora territory with your father figure, Rost. Now, if you've ever seen the hit Netflix TV show Stranger Things, the dynamic between Aloy and Rost is almost exactly that of Eleven and Hopper. Rost is your adopted dad, and he's tough on you, but it's because he's preparing you for a life of after him and a life of surviving in these wilds as an outcast. One day, as a mischievous kid, you're frolicking around when you get bullied for being an outcast by some other kids. You run away, and that's when you fall into an old world ruin. These ruins are relics of the past world, with incredibly advanced technology and ideas that this new generation of humans simply cannot comprehend. As you explore this ruin, you find a curious little device on the ground, a device that allows you to interact with old world technology like no one else can, and a device that allows you to see the weak spots of machines and their patrol paths. As you make your way out of the ruin, you decide that you're done being bullied and done being an outcast. You need to find out what happened to your family, and this little device known as a focus is going to help you do it. In order to accomplish this goal, there are a couple of things that need to be done. First, you need to speak to Allmother, the goddess of the Nora tribe, tucked away in a mountain. But in order to do that, you must not be an outcast anymore. And to do that, you must complete the Nora Brave trials. The Nora Brave are essentially the protectors of the Nora, skilled hunters and archers that protect the territory from machines and enemy factions. The Nora Brave trials is a grueling race that, if you win, inducts you into the Nora Brave. Winning these trials is the ticket for you, Aloy, to no longer be an outcast and to finally get answers on your origin. So you do just that. You spend your formative years training, learning how to hunt these machines, how to become a bowmaster, and how to climb up the tallest mountains. And when you turn 19, Ross decides you're finally ready to compete in these trials. And so you do just that. You complete the trials in record times, finally becoming a Nora Brave and an outcast no longer. But right as you finish the trial, a devastating attack occurs. A mysterious, shadowy group attacks the Nora unprovoked, torching the whole of the village, killing most of the competitors in the Nora Brave trials, and of course, killing your father figure, Rost, the only man who ever treated you like a regular human being and not like a disgusting outcast. You're devastated. You feel as though you got one step closer to uncovering the truth of your origins, but lost so much in the process. You go to the High Matriarchs, the leaders of the Nora clan, and beg them for you to go out and find the people who hurt the Nora tribe. A noble deed, as this is a tribe that considered you an outcast a mere hour ago. In the process of meeting the High Matriarchs high up in the mountain, known as Matriarch's Mercy, you realize that this is where they say the goddess Allmother is located, and where you, Aloy, were found the night of your birth. You approach the door, and a blue light scans you, and a robotic voice echoes out from the mountain. To the Nora, this is their goddess Allmother, but you realize that this goddess, something that these Nora people base their entire livelihoods and way of life around, isn't anything more than a machine and a door hiding something on the other side. The High Matriarchs take this robotic voice as Allmother's sign that you, Aloy, are the chosen seeker to go beyond Nora territory and to find out who attacked the Nora and how to stop them. Hopefully, this journey will also coincide with your personal journey of figuring out who you are and where you came from. And thus, the prologue ends. Before I continue with the story, I want to give my thoughts on this premise. Like much of the rest of the game, the idea behind this premise is so goddamn interesting. As someone who lives in the here and now, it was such an interesting concept to base an entire religion, an entire walk of life and tribe off a robotic, automated voice that the tribe folks see as a goddess. If the world was ever to become extinct as we know it, I wouldn't doubt that a tribe like this could emerge. They don't know where this technology came from, only that it's been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. They don't know how it works, only that it speaks and emits a blue light from time to time. It's entirely plausible that a group of people could take this uncertainty and base an entire religion off of it. The intrigue off the bat is there, the questions start piling up. Aloy is a very likable main protagonist, but once again, the execution falls flat. The main problem I have is with the dialogue. The dialogue is rough. If a game like Dragon Age the Veilguard got shit for overly nice and cheery dialogue for the situation the main characters were in, I think Horizon Zero Dawn should get that same treatment. It's not as quippy as Dragon Age the Veilguard, but the dialogue itself is still very shallow. The voice acting is decent enough, but the robotic way these characters talk to each other, the absolutely overblown personalities of some of the side characters you meet, and the lack of grit in what is an otherwise pretty harsh and unforgiving world is hard to get past. It also doesn't help that Aloy is written like a kid's movie hero instead of an actual person with actual feelings. What I mean by this is that Aloy suffers from what I call I can do no wrong syndrome, meaning she is so righteous in her ways that she will never cheat, lie, steal, or otherwise express anything other than the utmost empathy for anyone she comes across. This makes her feel entirely unbelievable as a main protagonist. This is a girl who's been constantly wronged by the world. A girl whose own people dare not say a word to her because of something her parents did. A girl whose upbringing was made significantly harder in an already harsh world because people refuse to help an outcast. And yet, she chooses to help them anyway. This may seem admirable and righteous. I see it as unrealistic and fake. Back to the story though, your next logical step in finding these killers is to go to Meridian, the capital of the Sundom, another tribe that recently had a civil war. So, for the first time in your life, you leave Nora territory as a newly anointed seeker of the tribe to seek the answers of who attacked your clan and where you came from. Like I mentioned earlier, I truly was intrigued by the story and the prologue. The world's lore itself felt so deep and ripe for discovery that I genuinely wanted to learn more about this world and who Aloy really was as a person, but the quests and side quests in this game make it incredibly hard to do so. Almost every single quest in this game starts the same. So-and-so needs your help for something, and it's your job to go out and fix this person's mess for them. Whether it's grabbing SnapMaw lenses because they forgot to, or retrieving their lost supplies, or helping them find their lost sibling, almost every single quest in this game relegates Aloy to a protector/errand worker, and it started getting frustrating fast. These quests themselves are also incredibly basic. Oftentimes, you use your focus to track footsteps or a scent, and that inevitably leads you to whatever you need to do. You get that thing or find that person, and you bring it back to the quest giver. So I'm progressing through these quests and I'm getting increasingly frustrated because A, the quests keep relegating Aloy to an errand girl, and B, the content within these quests isn't anything interesting. It doesn't help that about halfway through the game, you meet possibly one of the biggest dicks in gaming history, Silence, a man who's incredibly annoying and incredibly brash, but also a man who seems to know an awful lot about the enemy, how to stop them, and where to go looking for answers about your past. This is around the part of the story where the main enemy starts to become secondary, and your past and the secrets of how the world got to this point become the primary objective. So you go to these various places said to be holding key information about the old world, and every time I felt like we were a step away from the answer was pushed back 10 more steps due to the information we had learned. This cat and mouse game really started to frustrate me. At one point, I hit kind of a breaking point. I wasn't really having fun in the world anymore, the gameplay wasn't doing much for me, and the story felt like it was going in circles. That was until a certain mission. A mission where we were tasked to go to an old ruin, like we were many of other times, but this time, we actually did discover why the world was the way it was, who Aloy was and where she came from, and how we could use this information to stop the enemy. And let me tell you right now, this is where the game clicked for me. I realized that all the frustration I was feeling, that anxious frustration of not knowing what the answer to all this was, to why the world became the way it became, the constant fetch quests, was Aloy's frustration. Aloy was being put in these situations where she was relegated to an errand girl and she was going to ruin after ruin only to leave with more questions than answers. And in many ways, the same feelings I was feeling were the ones Aloy was feeling simultaneously in the game. I mean, the writing was on the wall. The dialogue between Aloy and Silence was getting increasingly short and brash. Aloy's demeanor towards other people was getting increasingly short as well. The question now was all that frustration of the tens of hours before this point worth the payoff of the answer? To me, that answer was yes. From that point on in the story, I felt lighter. I was willing to go out and do those menial side quests and those dumb activities because I finally knew what I was working towards. And in the end, I enjoyed how the game wrapped up and set up an incredibly deep and lore-filled world that many people fell in love with when the game first released. I understood the hype and excitement for Horizon Forbidden West release when I had not before, and I realized that this game's success is a product of incredible world building and a world so fantastical and unique compared to thousands of games before it. All this talk about questions and answers, it's time to answer the question I posed at the very beginning of the video. Is Horizon Zero Dawn a true forgotten gem, or have people rightly forgotten this game? I think, as the world usually goes, the answer is somewhere in the middle. To start back at the beginning with the world, I think people have, rightfully so, soured on the Ubisoft checklist style open world. It's a formula that has been tirelessly done by not only Ubisoft, but by a myriad of copycats wanting to have a world brimming with things to do. Horizon Zero Dawn's graphics are great, even if you played the original version that came out in 2017. But the world itself is incredibly derivative and lacking of anything new or innovating. I think, over time, people have recognized this shortcoming and become tired of it. This world might have felt new and refreshing at the time, but the systems that govern this world are old and dated. These days, developers like Sucker Punch and their Ghost series, or Warhorse and their Kingdom Come series, are actively taking steps to create vastness and space in their world, not fill it to the brim with icons and checkboxes. Similarly with the gameplay, I think on the surface the gameplay looks great with the sliding, dodging, and weak spot mechanic, but as time has gone on, those aspects of gameplay have been done better by other games. Those ideas may have been fresh and cool in 2017, and the relative jank of the system could have been overlooked for just how cool the gameplay looked, but these days, players expect mechanically sound gameplay, even if it comes at the cost of gameplay not looking super flashy. At the time, third-person gameplay like this may have been seen as the pinnacle of what could have been accomplished. But as time has gone on, we have gotten some truly elite third-person gameplay. That same year, Assassin's Creed Origins came out, a game that I believe has better third-person gameplay than Horizon Zero Dawn. A couple of years later, Ghost of Tsushima came out, a game that still to this day is considered to have one of the best third-person combat systems. It's easy to forget a game like Horizon Zero Dawn in terms of gameplay when other games came out and did what Horizon Zero Dawn did, but better. I think the only place where Horizon Zero Dawn really does hold up to this day is within the world building and story. The dialogue is still pretty bad. It may have gotten a pass back in 2017, but since that year, countless games have come out that have truly transcended the medium in terms of storytelling. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk, Expedition 33, and even Kingdom Come Deliverance show just how good dialogue can be in a game. And I think Horizon Zero Dawn just doesn't sit on the same level as the games I just mentioned. However, where the game does stack up quite well is within the lore and world building. Through it all, the ups and downs, the frustrations, and the good times, I cannot deny that this game's world and lore was engrossing. I wanted to figure out how the world came to be in the state it is right now, and how Aloy played a part in all of it. The different tribes, the complex political actions that they took against each other based on their beliefs and motives, they're all things that I truly enjoyed getting to learn. It's the sole reason why I'm excited to give Horizon Forbidden West a chance. I want to see how the lore expands and where Aloy's journey goes next. Ironically, I don't think I can give a definitive answer on whether or not this game truly is a forgotten masterpiece or a game worth losing to time. But what I can say is that if you're ever curious about trying this game, you'll know if this game has its hooks in you within the first hour. Either you find the lore, the world around you, and Aloy's story interesting, or you don't. And that interest is either going to propel you into finding the secrets hidden in this world, or eventually lead you to fizzle out like I did all those years ago. For my money, I think this game is worth giving it a try. If you're more tolerant to Ubisoft style open worlds than me, you might like this game even more than I did. And let me be clear, there is a reason why this series of games is one of the highest selling first party series by Sony. There's a reason why Sony made a Lego version of this game and why they wanted to make an MMO next. There is genuine interest in the world that Guerrilla Games built, even if the execution isn't completely there. All in all, I came away satisfied from my time with Horizon Zero Dawn, and I look forward to seeing where Aloy's journey takes her in Horizon Forbidden West and beyond. As of recording this review, I haven't started my playthrough of Horizon Forbidden West quite yet, so here's hoping they address some of my biggest complaints with the world and gameplay of Horizon Zero Dawn, and next retrospective, I can come away saying I truly enjoyed my time with this game from top to bottom. Either way, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on Horizon Zero Dawn. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Is this a game that you still have in your rotation 8 years later? Or is this a game that you've soured on, a game that you may not like as much, a game that maybe was a product of its time even? I want to hear everything y'all have to say down in the comments below. Again, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button. And please consider subscribing to see more content like this. We've got much more on the way. But yeah, guys, it's been CGG. I'm out.